Okay, so these are product of sine. And if you look at it, we have the 2 in front. But if you want to just do a multiplication of the 2, you're just dividing it by 2. So this is just a cleaner way. It's a little more compact. But if you just have sine times cosine, you put the 2 underneath your sum and difference. So our first one is sine sine. So that's here. Sine times sine would be cosine cosine. So we end up with cosine of x minus 5x minus cosine of x plus 5x. And then, like I said, we just put the 2 underneath. And then that way we would end up with what sine times cosine would be. And order doesn't matter here. This is a product. And so that doesn't matter in here. It will take care of itself. Because what's x take away 5x? That will give us negative 4x. But this is an even function. So we end up with cosine of 4x minus cosine of 6x all over 2. So our sine x times sine 5x became cosine 4x minus cosine 6x divided by 2. These are truly very simple. It's just plug and play is all we're doing. So cosine cosine is right here, and that would be cosine cosine as well, with a plus. So if you notice, the cosine cosine and the sine sine are both cosines, and the sine cosine and cosine sine are both sines. So when they're mixed, it's all sines, because remember sine, he likes to share. Cosine is selfish, and so sine took in as well. He became selfish, and so it's cosines. So sharing, it's all sine. Cosine is not sharing. Okay. Control, remember? All right, back to this. So cosine cosine is going to be cosine cosine. So this is cosine 5x plus 3x plus cosine 5x minus 3x. And again, it doesn't matter. These can go in either order. So if you want to put the minus first on each and the plus, it's the same thing. This is cosine of 8x plus cosine of 2x. And there we go. And the whole thing is being divided by 2. Here, let me move that one down so we have a nice clean note page. Put a 2 under it. And we got room over here, so I will just move it over there. All right, so there we go. So now you can use it with angles as well. So this is cosine cosine, cosine cosine, and there's a 3 in front. So we just carry the 3 over, and we get 3. In fact, you can even introduce the 2 like that. And we would get cosine of 37.5 plus 7.5 degrees plus cosine 37.5 degrees minus 7.5 degrees. And so when I'm doing these, I always put the larger one first because it doesn't matter with order. This is product, so they're commutative, which means these will change as well. Okay, so we end up with 3 over 2. Remember the whole thing divided by 2? I just made it a half. Cosine of 45 degrees plus cosine of 30 degrees. And then now we can find their exact values. So this is 3/2. Cosine of 45 is rad 2 over 2 plus rad 3 over 2. All right, and we cannot add radicals. So this ends up with 3 over 2. And then we have radical 2 plus radical 3 over the common denominator 2. And this is why you want to add them, so now we can multiply it. So we end up with 3. I'm going to distribute it now. Square root of 2 plus 3 square root of 3 all over 4. So if we distribute that, this goes to this guy. We end up with 3 radical 2, 3 radical 3 all over 4. And that's how we use our sum and difference, product of sum. Okay, now let's try the reverse. This is now sum to product. And so if we have sine sine, we get sine cosine. Sine sine, we get cosine sine. And again, cosine is not a share, he's a control freak. So cosine cosine, it's all cosines. Cosine cosine, it's all sines. But you see the sines, they share. Cosines don't. Okay. So we have sine plus sine. Sine plus sine. So it's this one. So it's 2 sine, and then the x and the y are the letters that we are adding. So we're going to take this angle and add them. So it's 5x plus 3x over 2 cosine and then it's 5x minus 3x all over 2. Again, put the larger one first because they're commutative. The only one where it will actually matter is here, if you have a minus and a minus. So if it's minus, then that is the first and that is the second. So if you are subtracting, that is when order matters. Okay, so let's try this again, but this time, let's make it a minus sign. So we're going to change this to a subtraction so you can see what I'm talking about with order. So with the difference here, the reason I also like it that we pick cosine is it's slightly different. Of all of these, they're normally positive if you do the x and the y together, but the cosine would come out to be negative. So to take care of that, what I've done is just switch them. If you switch these two, you change the order, that changes the sign. So like if we had 3 take away 2, it's positive. 2 take away 3, it's now negative, and that'll take care of it. So this is true. It's weird, but that just means for all of this, it doesn't really matter where you put the x and the y. In the first one, it just means that the first term needs to be subtracted when you're dealing with cosine. Remember, cosine is a control freak. It's all weird. So let's write it. This is 2 sine, and it doesn't matter. We're just going to add them. So 9x plus 2x over 2. And then we put sine again, but on this one, it's 2x take away 9x over 2. So the first will go last because he's cosine. So whatever you start with, that's what you end with. See, it's on the outside. So this becomes 2 sine 11x over 2. And then sine negative 7x over 2. So we then take that negative out, and we end up with negative 2 sine 11x over 2 sine 7x over 2. Remember, we can take it out because it's an odd function. Odd functions mean if it's negative inside, it's negative outside. All right, but here's the nice thing is we can take two values that are not exact and make them exact. So sine of 75 and sine of 15 is the first one. So we end up with 2, and then we add them. And then we do a cosine and we subtract them. And again, put the larger one first. Okay, so we end up with 2 sine 90 divided by 2. That's 45 degrees. And then that would give us 60 divided by 2 is 30 degrees. And now we just need to find their exact values. So sine would be rad 2 over 2. And cosine would be square root of 3 over 2, which ends up with rad 6 over 2. And again, you want to check it with your calculator. So sine of 75 and sine of 15 is the same exact thing as square root of 6 over 2. So there you go. Thank you.